I
See
worked.
see if it works.
There we go. Does that work? Can you hear any different?
I don't know, it's on there.
Okay.
It's on there.
It looks
We'll tape
good.
it.
I feel more important. And before I started working in planned giving, so the second time I came back was in the year 2000. I worked in the legislature for 12 years. And in a way, it was kind of like preparing me for foundation work, because the legislature was all about figuring out who should get what money. It's like one big foundation in a way, and to help the state of Nebraska. And but it was on the giving side versus the asking side, so that was a big difference. So 2000, I went to work for the foundation, and I started as a gift planner, and I knew nothing, and I did a lot of trainings. I really had a lot of people that that helped me learn, and I also learned from my mistakes. I think that's probably where I got my most training, is when I did something incorrectly. And then I went on to do planned giving for a variety of other organizations, and then came back to the foundation in 2017 and was the development director for Doherty Water for Food Global Institute. And then, yay, we had an opening in the planned giving department, and I really wanted to come back, because that's what I like to do the best, is help people plan, figure out what it is that they want to do, figure out the best way to do it, and then help them accomplish it. So that's me.
That's me. Again, I've been here about a dozen years. Actually started on Give to Lincoln Day #2. We're on number 14, come at the end of May here at the Community Foundation. And it's been fun to be part of that. I'm an attorney for way too long, and worked at a couple trust companies, opened up Norwest Bank in Lincoln in the late 80s that became Wells, that bought NBC, and then you go through all the names of all the different banks and all of that. Left there, started another trust department for the Bank of Oklahoma, which is still over, now it's in the Union Bank Place building, that's where we were. Kind of a specialized niche world, but had always been involved not just in the financial side of all the trust stuff and the legal side, but I was also on a huge number of nonprofit boards. And so I got a call from a friend a dozen or so years ago that said, did you ever think about, it was one of those, did you ever think about phone calls? And I didn't say no, I said, let's talk. And 5 months later, I was out front of this building as people came to make contributions to their favorite nonprofits, and I was writing receipts and doing all that kind of stuff. So things just turn around and work through, but it's all about helping people do these great things that they want to do and helping craft them a little bit. That's a little bit more. It's one thing to be a fundraiser and just say, hey, write me a check for $50 and try and get 200 people to do that. It's another thing to work on a planned gift. I'm looking at you. And help them craft that gift, not just, oh, when I die, I'm going to give you X and do this. It's, well, what are you going to use it for? How are we going to apply that to do what you really want to do? And what's that going to look like in 20 years? And all of those, and some of that stuff is what we're talking about. Keith's comment about a smaller nonprofit receiving a gift that kind of has some guardrails around it and some requirements around it. I could say that was the prior gift planner that accepted that gift. It wasn't the person that called you. That's the thing. We're going to be gone when everybody finds the mistakes that I made helping people create gifts. But it's that kind of thing, crafting that for folks and helping them understand what they're trying to do, what might that look like in 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road, helping, whether it's the University Foundation and all the organizations or smaller organizations that are pretty focused. So that's how I'm here, and I've worked with some unusual things, and I've called a number of you in this room over the years to say, what do I do with this? And that's really what this is all about. So are there We can, if anybody's got a question, I think we can start with that. We have a couple ideas of some issues that have popped up over the years, but if you have something that bumped on, landed on your desk recently, fire away. I'm not seeing anything yet.
I maybe have a general question that's not quite specific yet, but when you hear of something, has there anything changed with, I guess, in the 2020s now from when you first started doing this work? Like, does your initial thought process and questions, has anything really changed from you first started doing that work to now due to, laws, regulations, different vehicles, taxes, et cetera?
Well, definitely, we've had tax changes, the security, I forget what they're even called.
Secure Act.
Secure
Secure Act,
Act,
yeah, that
and the 2.0 Secure Act. But even before then, I'm trying to think, some of the, when I first started here, we did, in terms of charitable remainder trusts, you did a net plus makeup trust or NICRET. And there wasn't any, you didn't do straight CRETs. And it was right about maybe 2001 when the Congress passed legislation that would allow flip CRETs. And so that you could have, based on some specific happening, like one of the most ones that you run into are a donor puts in a piece of property into a CRET, and then it flips after the property is sold, beginning the year after the property is sold. So we never used to have flip CRETs, so that was a big one. And then another thing is, yeah.
How many of you know what a flip CRET is?
Oh, golly, sorry. Okay.
There you go.
Oh dear, how can I do this like shortly so we don't just all go into a coma and fall asleep? So a charitable remainder trust is actually a trust where a donor puts some kind of asset into this trust, and then the trust pays the donor or whoever the donor wants, beneficiaries get an income for life or a term of years. And then at the end of that life or lives or term of years, the remainder goes to charity. And the nice thing is that, you can do cash. Best is appreciated, highly appreciated stock, preferably, or real estate, for example. But you can put a lot of different things into a trust. But the problem is when you put something into that trust that isn't liquid yet, how do you pay that income? So like the idea would be, if the issues would be, do I give them part of the living room back for their payment? So we have different rules about when your payments actually start coming to be, and it will be usually the lesser of what income the trust has made, or a specific percentage that you chose at the very beginning. And I'm sure that still wasn't very good, but so
No, that was really good, by the way.
So that change made things real flexible for people to think about. Gosh, I didn't like it before, but this idea that I could put real estate in and then have it flip to a specific percentage that I wanted, and have more of a, it's not a fixed income, but a sure income, made people more interested in doing charitable remainder unit trusts. And then also back in the day, charitable remainder annuity trusts were really big, and now they're not. But I'm trying to think why, because of the lower AFR rate?
I think that must be it.
To me, the biggest thing is it just costs more to set up, and from a donor perspective, you can run out of money with a CRET, where as long as you're dealing with a big enough charity, using a gift annuity instead means you'll never run out of payments for the donor. I think that's that's really
Yeah, I
why.
think
Thank you.
that's-
Thank
And the
you.
flexibility, that's been the change. I mean, you used to lock in all these agreements. I mean, that's when what was the exemption amount was $600,000. I mean, you
Right.
go back, I mean, it's, what is it, 15, or just shy of 15 this year. And no portability, all those rules, it was, you would set them up and they were kind of locked in because that's the way the system worked. Well, now everybody wants flexibility. So again, the flip, all of that with especially farm ground, I want to put a little quarter in that and someday I'll sell it.
So tools, various tools to make plan gifts have changed over the years, definitely.
I
Emily,
want to say that I've worked at 3 nonprofits, and the University Foundation is the only one that's managed their own trusts. And so, one of the benefits of the people in this room, if your organization does not have their own trusts, is you have people in this room who do trusts.
right?
Whether that's with
Mhm.
LCF, or the University Foundation, or Henkenius, or who else is the,
LCMS.
Yeah, LCMS, Boys Town,
yeah.
We have moved, the Community Foundation used to be trustee and do all the work for the last 15, probably 20 years. We have said we don't want to be the trustee anymore.
Yeah.
We'll work on the charitable side of it. And there are great, again, we just pointed them out, that there are great institutions that we can refer clients to, or their attorneys can refer clients to, and put all that together. And that's kind of been a change too. Everybody kind of used to do everything, and now we're truly, and I'll tell you this from my dozen years here, I remember coming to a charitable gift planners meeting right after I started, and it was a national speaker, and people were bringing up scenarios and questions, and the guy kind of 3/4 of the way through it said, "I can't believe we're in a room of essentially competing," though we really didn't compete, competing nonprofits, and you're talking about donors. Now, there's no names, but if you really worked hard, you might be able to figure out who the donor might have been. And people are willing to share their issues, their questions, how do we navigate this, with a whole bunch of people in the room, and that's been just fantastic. So that's also been a change in the last dozen or so years. Of people really being able in Nebraska to collaborate. And that's the other thing. We don't have to be trustee anymore on all that and control that whole thing. We'll just work with the partners and we all work back and forth. So that'd be the change, Vic.
And the other change that I think you probably all work with that's been great is the qualified charitable distributions. I mean, that works with any size charity. And it also helps who has retirement accounts that you could continue to work with in what do they want to do with that retirement asset when they pass away.
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
It's easier in the education space because you have often better records, I'm not going to say perfect records, of birthdays. It's a little harder in our world to always get everybody's birthday. We try and
yeah.
collect that, but I don't know you're 70 and a half. Unless I know, unless we got your birth date in the system. And it's always all about the system. It's always about the database, of course. But that's been better. We've been better. Everybody's been better because it becomes much more important. We were chatting. I was chatting earlier with somebody who was working on a planned gift, and it's a perfect legacy gift. When I die, here's half my IRA, whatever. Pretty straightforward kind of thing. But what happens at 70 and a half and what happens at 73 is those future gift donors become current gift donors because they don't know what to do with that RMD, and they've already set up this future plan. Why don't we jumpstart it? Why don't we start that scholarship? Why don't do whatever? Now, it depends on the dollar amounts, it depends on all the situations, but that's been the change. Once the QCD, and then of course RMDs changed the dates, once that became locked in, because you remember when it was on and off, it kind of have it.
Yeah.
And then
It was
they do it
retroactive.
retroactive a couple times. It was a
04,
mess for years
05.
because you didn't know if they were going to renew it. Back and forth. Now that it's in, it becomes a little more permanent. And tell you the best. A lot of our efforts are working with donors that, I mean, I'll get a call and they, well, I'm not sure what I want to do with this kind of thing. And like, well, you said when you're gone, you want to do these 3 things that are important to you. Are they still important? Or is there one that you want to kickstart right now? And so that's been the change now that the QCDs are locked in. So that's not super complicated, but that's just a marketing strategy that you just have to keep working on.
And the last thing would be donor advised funds.
Yeah.
I think they were in existence in 2000. I'm not really sure, but
yeah.
gosh,
They were.
the growth of donor advised funds are just, that might be the biggest
I know
change.
a little bit more of that because we spend so much
You
work
have
at the
them.
community foundation that sponsors donor advised funds. And the university does too in its way. But we actually had a prior version of it in 1981. But you had to have a private letter ruling. And there was a donor-directed depository. Not enough gray hair in this room to remember. DDDs, charitable checkbooks. In fact, Omaha, there's nobody from OCF here. Omaha still has, and we still have a separate entity that's the Lincoln Community Foundation Donor-Directed Depository, Inc. So we got to pay our $25 to the Secretary of State every 2 years to maintain that separate corporation to do that. Omaha and some other community foundations have kept theirs. There's a tiny bit of difference in the rules of grants that can go out of a donor-directed depository versus the donor-advised fund. Just a tiny little bit. They're actually using it kind of a different marketing for small transactional things. They encourage people to have their, I don't know if they call it a checkbook, names keep changing, or DED. For larger, they have minimums of, I don't know whether it's 25 or 50 or something, for a full-on donor-advised fund. So that's changed, but maybe it's coming back. Maybe they're using it, they're actually using it for different types of donors. I think their fee structure is different. I think their investment options are very different, but it gives a choice. We haven't opened ours back up here, but when I came, we were converting everybody over to use the donor advised fund world. So that's just the nature of that world is different. And now that QCDs are permanent, that's another change because you have people moving through their lives using donor advised funds, and then they hit 70 and a half or 73 and they stop using their donor advised funds unless they have appreciated securities. That's really the change. If I have to take money out of my IRA and it's tax free, I'm doing that. And the change of IRA providers, custodians and such, that how many people know folks who have a checkbook, literally a checkbook given to them by and they can write their own gifts out of their QCDs, out of their IRA, because they have a money market piece of that, and they work it that way. That was not the way it used to be. You were lucky to get 1 or 2 distributions from your IRA, and it was hard, and it was that. So that's again, talking about changes, whether it's 2000 or others, but that's stuff that's impacted us a lot, all of us. And you just need to know that's out there when you're working with donors and they're managing what they're trying to do.
Would you also add the change from estate tax planning to income tax planning?
Oh, golly,
Yeah, from a
yes.
big 30,000 foot perspective. Now, the numbers from Giving USA are the number of people who made charitable contributions drop. The people that itemize is 10%, is that 9?
really small
Something
amount.
From used to be 30 or so, it's really dropped. And that has impacted giving, and Giving USA shows that it has in their annual statistics. So who knows what'll happen? Will it go back?
I'm waiting for them to put tariffs on giving.
On donor advised
Yes.
fund?
Yeah.
On gifts?
Gifts.
Let me put it on.
Can you tell us
on
maybe
fentanyl.
one of your favorite gift stories, and whether it's interesting from a planning standpoint or unique or something like stands out to you that was maybe especially rewarding?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, go ahead, I got one.
You know, okay, I guess it's going to be a CRET theme for me today. But
No, you
so
technical people.
I had a donor, and a lot of donors. It used to be that if you had money left over in your retirement asset, you could pass that on to other family members. You still can, but it was the family member who received it got to take that IRA or those retirement assets over their entire life. And now it's 10 years. And then once it became 10 years, for a while, people were at least able to decide how much they wanted to take in year 1 through year 10. Maybe they were close to retirement, and so they were going to take very little or none until maybe that 9th and 10th year, and then they would take it all out. But now it's a very structured 10 years. So it's a real shortened period of time for a beneficiary individual to receive a bunch of money. And so donors are looking for ways to stretch that. And I know we've had presentations over the years on how to create, they called it a stretch IRA. So now we're trying to how can we recreate that a different way since we no longer are allowed a stretch IRA. So I worked with a family. And doctors are notorious for having, they even refer to it as overfunded retirement accounts. And I'll just say IRA because I guess this was an IRA. And that can be their biggest asset that they have. And so he really wanted this to go to his children, his children's spouse, if still alive and still married, to their child, and their grandchildren. And but then he's had multiple cancers, so the situation was it looked like he might die before his wife, who has Alzheimer's, and so really needs to be taken care of. So what we ended up doing, and this is from a technical thing, but it gave him such peace of mind that there was the emotional side that I really relate to. What we ended up doing is, I'll just tell you what we started to do, and then he decided to fund it early. But we created a testamentary charitable remainder unit trust, funded with his retirement assets as they were on the day that he passed, except for we made his wife the primary beneficiary and the charitable remainder trust, and we did 2, one for each daughter, but I'm going to talk about it like it's one. We made the charitable remainder unit trust secondary beneficiary, and the wife, and of course it will be her advisors, family, et cetera, because making decisions, her power of attorney and her executor, et cetera, can choose to, oh God, I always forget the word. It's a very simple word. It's not even really a legal one.
Disclaim.
Thank you.
There it is.
Disclaim whatever amount she and her advisors feel would be good, and that disclaimed amount will start the charitable remainder unit trust. Will go into the charitable remainder unit trust. So we call that ability to post-death plan. So the spouse, the surviving spouse, has around 9 months to decide what she or he is going to disclaim. And so they can make a real-time decision. The plan is, this retirement account is, 16 million. So the likelihood that a large part of it will go into the charitable remainder unit trust. And
That's
then when she dies, she'll have the ability and is planning to add whatever is left in her retirement account to add to the charitable remainder unit trust. So that the children, the son-in-laws, the grandchildren will have this opportunity for income for probably around 50 years. Now we'll see, like Steve, you and I will be gone, you know, when that, so you have to have a lot of faith, you know, that disclaiming is something that is a decision that, you know, sounds really great now, like they're just so sure this is what they're going to do. Well, you know, it's still revocable in the sense of what they're going to disclaim or not. In the meantime, they already funded these CRUTs, so they're very committed to doing it.
So how
That's a
does
good
that
one.
benefit their charitable interest creating these?
Because they're so far in
Far out.
advance. No,
Just when, I mean, so this is creating these trusts, it's paying money to their kids and spouses, what does the
the remainder do. It is for medical technology advancement, which no matter when that comes, will there always be advancement in medical technology? You betcha. Yeah.
It just may take a while if you
It
got.
just may take a while.
So I have one that is a favorite, and it was pretty recent, actually, it was in the paper, and it's, I don't know how, I'm seeing it more popular the last handful of years, is what generally I call a term endowment, for lack of any other words. And that's where you pretend it's an endowment, but it's got a time clock on it. And this was a donor who loved that idea. Mark Tallman is his name, was his name. A lot of you know the Tallmans in the university and all that kind of stuff. Mark was a great guy, and I knew him. I worked with his attorney. A number of us have on a number of things, and he really was committed to Lincoln and certain nonprofits in town, but he didn't want it to go on a little bit forever. I always joke about, everybody's tired of hearing this, I had a 94-year-old donor that said forever is too long. And he did a term endowment too. That was the first one I did, that was many years ago. But they're more and more popular. People don't want to stretch these things, again, forever is way too long. And he had gone through all the stuff he had given, and that's why it was fun to work with him, all of the different things he had supported, and kind of came down to, well, I think it was 7 when we're all done, of just things that were really important to him, and excavating that process, much like in the university system and others, what departments, what things, where do you want to touch when you're gone? And he had those, and so we created that, and he had some medical issues and died last year. And we were able to then pull together all 7. He didn't want to tell them until he died, by the way. How many have donors that do that? I mean, he was good givers to them and whatever, but he didn't tell them that this was set up when he was gone. He knew it, and the attorney, who has since retired, and me, have been, knew about it, and it was just whenever it was going to be. So we brought all of the 7 nonprofits together with Mark's brother, surviving brother. A lot of you know Tom Tallman, who's a buddy of mine, and Tom was willing to just kind of share a little bit about his brother, that these nonprofits kind of knew, but he was always kind of reclusive. A nonprofit that he had supported for years would say, "Oh, can I come out and just say hi?" I'm like, no. And we barged in on him years ago, a couple other people in the foundation, because he was a strong supporter of our match fund for Give to Lincoln Day, because he really was a supporter of all of Lincoln. And literally brought donuts, he's a big donut fan, brought donuts and just essentially barged into his office. And it was one of the few times you could really meet with him do it, because he didn't want to. He didn't want it known. He didn't want it whatever. But using that, which again, I think is more common. People, Emily, you mentioned one of your issues. It's being more flexible. Nobody's using annuity trusts. They want the flexibility with whatever asset. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows I haven't read the news. I don't know what happened this morning in the market. You know, nobody knows that stuff, and people want to have greater flexibility. And having this, I want to support these organizations in a more meaningful way, but there's a clock. The calendar's going to turn. I keep mixing metaphors. And in 10 years, that's it. And so we've started that, and it was an amazing experience to bring all of them together, a couple representatives from each of the nonprofits and the surviving brother, and we had worked with them in all of the pieces to have that. So keep that in the bag of tricks. You might have to have some rules around how long that term is going to be if you choose to do that. Yeah.
So Chip, with the endowment, so is there a higher payout every year, or is the lump sum, the corpus go?
It's this was set up, and the couple I've done have been pretty. I mean, if it's 10-year, you get a 10th the first year, a 9th, 8th, 7th. You just work your way down. Because again, it's moving. The key behind it is with MIFA, we have to tell them we're investing it under the endowment rules in a permanent way. No, but we know we're going to pay it out. And we do kind of convert it to cash the last year, so we know what that number is, but that's just the last couple months before that goes. So we're complying with that side of it. They know we're investing it as if it's a permanent fund, but there's just a formula in that I work with the accounting people on, so they make sure they can do it. And like I said, I don't know if I'm going to be around in 10 years. It just kind of gets started, and we hope we set it up properly and the formula works. So far it's worked.
So you're looking here at variable.
So it becomes variable because you're investing, the fund is the fund, and it's just at a point in time, it's determined in the agreement, and it's where everybody has a point in time where they set their endowment, what's the spending amount for the next year. And we use that clearly described in the document, and then we'll take that and we'll say, oh, it's the second year, what's 1/9 of that? That's this number, divide it by 7, here you go. And we have a date of when those checks go out. So we need to work through that. The learning was really working with the nonprofits to set their expectations properly, so they don't think it's going to be, we all know about what it's going to be. I mean, it's generally about this. Our endowment payouts, our spending rates are based on 16 quarters or 12 quarters or whatever. For general stuff, this is a actual point in time, what's the balance on that day? So it's going to be a little more variable, but short time. Yeah, Michael.
At the end of the term, does the residual, does that go back to?
No, there's really nothing left, because the last year you're paying out 100% of what's left, but you've paid out all the other. So it's just math. Truly, it's just we're trying to make it simple, so it's just this.
It's exhausted at the end of the day.
That it's exhausted, yeah, and it's essentially 1/10 is left when you've paid out all the other 9/10. But who knows what the balance really is? But
And then not to get too deep in it, but how does the tax on this? So is it be a charitable deduction the year you start?
it was a deduction when he put it in.
created
So
it.
it's just a fund at the foundation. So there's no,
grants.
yeah, like a, gift annuity where we're doing all the pieces and whatever. No, it's just a straight up, it's just a grant from a designated endowment.
Got it.
Think of it that way.
Hey, Chip,
Yeah.
how do your fees work on that?
We chose to just fee it as like our endowment fee, but it just goes away at the end. I mean, it's big enough. Our fees, like trust department fees, it's a 1.5% on the first $750,000, and then it drops down, and there's benchmarks, and so we just charge our fee. It just doesn't go forever, it's that way. So it's just we're feeing it when we're doing the work. Yeah, and there was no fee on the front end coming in because it was going to an endowed fund. So, yeah, so as an interesting And I brought that up because really I've had a 2 or 3 of them, and it's just been these last handful of years where that's become popular. And again, it's flexibility. They want to, I don't want to give them that big check. I want to give them a kind of big check for a number of years to help them and hopefully work them into, it doesn't always work this way. Who's going to take over that gift when the 10 years is up? It's going to end.
Now, oh, go ahead.
Scott,
Yeah.
question. Is there a minimum that you think about whenever you're thinking about this type of vehicle?
We haven't. We have really low minimums here for endowed funds. So technically you can do that. We have not, we're in the process of working on some new policies about how that works. So I'll tell you, 5 and 10 years makes kind of sense. 10 years is better of doing this. I had somebody come to me and say they wanted to have a gift. They wanted it from their IRA. They really wanted to go in a donor advised fund, but you can't do that. However, Adrian Smith just introduced a bill to change that 2 days ago.
Yeah.
With a Democrat also in the House. So, and he's on Ways and Means Committee, Adrian, Congressman Smith is. So, more to come on that. But I lost track of where I was going with that story. What was it? Yeah. Somebody came and said, I want to make this gift, and I want it to be a 1-year term endowment, which essentially means they just wanted to make the gift next year.
Annual gift.
Yeah, they wanted to postpone. They wanted to get a deduction for this year or use their RMD for this year, whichever side of that they were on, and they wanted to wait to pay the gift until it's like just call the church, really, because that's where it was going to go. It's like stop, now. But once you start down the road, and so we're in the middle of trying to figure out our own internal policies. You could do whatever you wanted to do. But yeah, actually one of the daughters was an inactive CPA. So they were working this thing to try and do. And we just said, no, we won't.
How about minimum dollar amounts? Is that something you're kind of working
Yes. We have a minimum. People can set up really small endowments of, to 30 grand, which generates, a couple grand a year for specific things. We have not done it for this, plus how many different charities? 10's about as the max. We have people that create funds and they have 30 charities there. Not term endowments. They create the designated, welcome to Community Foundation land, everybody. You get all the, kind of interesting versions, but we're trying to rein that in. So you're right on it, and takes us a while, but we're in the process of trying to say they got to be 10 years, they got to be only 10 charities or 5, whatever. We haven't decided that
Manageable.
number. And it has to be at least $250,000, or something like that to make it manageable. You've been saving up a question. Keith's been trying to ask a question for a while.
I just have a few. No one else is filling them in. I have one that's really simple. It's not complicated, but somebody sent, but I thought it might be an interesting one. And it's basically donor wants to do, I'm paraphrasing, donor wants to do an estate gift, is going to make a nice estate gift to the charity, but has not told his 2 children, doesn't think the children are going to be happy. They're kind of relying on this, and said, hey, can you, development officer, do you want to help me explain it to them? So I just thought, any thoughts?
You be the bad cop. I'm the dad. I don't want to do that, but so you do it.
Yeah, you know what? That is the kind of thing that I'm ready and willing to do.
You are.
Because what's really going to happen out of that, I wish it would be better if it was someone who was more neutral, right? Not receiving what they're not anyway, I'm receiving what they were expecting to get. But I think I would work through the conversation really by a very earnest, honest conversation about asking the parents to explain why this is important to them and why this is part of their overall family heritage. And I think you could have a really good conversation. I did have to have this kind of conversation. This family had 14,000 acres of ranch land, Heart Mountains, you name it. It was like Yellowstone. It was in Wyoming. And the family decided, the husband in particular had decided that this big piece of land with 200 elk, and I mean, it truly was Yellowstone, only it was next door too. He decided that that had become the most important thing in his life. It was more important than God. It was more important than his family. And he decided because of that, he needed to get rid of it. He needed to, not get rid of it, but do something else with it, let go of it. And I was working at an international humanitarian organization at the time. And they had two sons who had grown up going to this land. They didn't live on it. They would go to it a lot. So it was like this special place to go and hunt. And I mean, they were big fishermen, hunters. And the sons, they were young adults, had thought this is what they were going to bring. Their children were going to have that same experience. And, like, Dad, you're giving away Yellowstone. It wasn't even the money, it was so much more than the value of the fiscal value of it. It was the memories that they'd had and the memories still to come. And but when they started to understand, and I did it more through like an interview process, when they started to understand that this was, and they were all very faith-based, that their father was doing something so much more important for them. And I'd earlier said, well, keep 1,000 acres or, something. You don't have to give it all away. And he said, no, I really do, because keeping any of it is like keeping all of it. I still have my problem that I'm coveting this more than I should be. And it went really well, but that doesn't mean that the sons were like all huggy and okay, I get it now. One understood it more. He was not married. The other one was married and a child on the way and was really thinking about that future. And anyway. Generational, that cabin at the lake in Minnesota that you're a fourth generation on, or, and the best memories of your life. And so it took a while. It actually took maybe 3 more years for this to finally completely be rectified, although they'd already done it. But I mean, the relationship was repaired, and it did take a long time. But I think it was really important for everybody to be heard. And there was so much more to it that I'm not going into, but that helped explain where the mom and dad were and what they cared about. This was going to save thousands of lives in Africa when you got down to it. And gosh, thousands of lives versus like we can find another place to hunt. It's not the last place to hunt. It's just the one we thought we were going to have. And but I didn't enjoy. I shouldn't say that. I was so grateful to be in that conversation, and then for the boys to be heard. There were tears. There were yelling. It was all over the map. But it had to come out, and then the healing began.
But it had to come out with you or us talking to the donor and say, I'll help you, but this is your decision. It's not our decision. And so you crafted that. I love the interview idea. I've had some not like that, but some of those meetings where the next generation is not as happy with how things have turned out, especially when they already are done. You know, it's not a negotiation anymore. It's like, just by the way, this is how this is
Right.
going to work.
This is
This is
happening.
how. I have a family that set up, really mom and dad set up a fund, an advised fund, but so there's mom and dad and there's 3 kids. They all want to vote on who's making grants out of this fund. Well, that's all great. Mom and dad get 2 votes each. That's 4. There's 3 kids on the other side. So mom and dad control everything structurally. It's what they really wanted to do. So it's not even democracy in that particular case. And so trying to talk to them and just make sure everybody kind of knows, number one, it's mom and dad's money. They can do anything they want. They wanted to kind of start this process and bring the children into it. But it was really they already made the call. And we're just helping. We're just kind of helping describe how things will work, trying to be the independent third party a little bit as we work through.
Like a facilitator or trusted advisor.
Exactly.
Even though we're getting a
Yeah, I
big
mean, you're
gift.
getting or we're holding or whatever, but
Right.
yeah.
And the boys had gone on mission trips since they were little kids. I shouldn't
wow.
call them mission trips, but along those lines. And as they grew in age and thought about, I think one of the best parts was when the son who was starting a family thought about what his father was trying to teach him. And that is the kind of thing, I'm going to get a little verklempt. That is what he wanted to also start to teach his children.
Yeah,
So he really
didn't have
saw
that
the
opportunity.
value beyond. Yeah.
Buy another ranch.
Yeah.
Did have 2 people submit questions in the online form.
Okay.
You both get gold stars, whoever that was. Do you want the easy one or the hard one?
The easy one.
The easy one's going to be hard to me, so yeah.
I don't know if this one's complex so much as constant for all of us.
Okay.
So for reaching donors, what's the sweet spot for contacting them frequently without it being annoying for the longtime donor and damaging future outreach? In this case, there's never been a return in outreach from the previous development outreach attempts.
Okay.
So-
I'm not
so
even sure
somebody-
I understand. You're getting ghosted for a long
So
time?
so the organization is reaching out and there's no response back from the donor who set up something
I
before?
don't know if they're like a great annual donor.
Okay.
and they look like a Thanksgiving prospect or what.
Okay.
No context.
Okay.
But if you want to speak up, feel free.
Well, that's what's helpful, I think, if you hear that, and then where are your first questions, and this isn't my question, but I think, what are your first
How do
questions
you-
that you go to? You look at the donor history, you look at, that would be helpful too, to know where you're going to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go.
Will
You want to go? I'll go.
No, I want you to go because I'm
I'll
still
go.
trying
Oh,
to figure out what the
you work
question
through it.
is.
Here. I'm with Vic on this one, and we get these every once in a while because some call will come in a different part of our organization, and there's only 18 of us. It's not like we're a huge organization, but say, can you call back? They had a question about this, or their weird response. They finally respond to the ghosting donor, and the first thing I have to go back and look, like I can't remember. We all have too much going on. And like, are they regular donors? Are they, again, some of you have campaigns that are regular annual campaigns, so you can tell if they're that kind of donor. Are they just special donors for special things? We have that giving day here. Where are they doing that? Because all those funnel through us so we see them, but they're really going out to other organizations. What are those organizations? Are they using us to help facilitate gifts to 3 different things? So that's first. And then our ongoing stewardship or contact or whatever, you just, whether it's a phone or an email or all the different versions we all have, you just try. How often do we try? Some donors, if they were already a donor, so they made a gift they're going to get some basic level of just here's what's going on kind of stuff. It's kind of automatic things, not individually crafted emails to check in. but we still try and do that. If they're a legacy donor, they said, oh, yeah, I'm going to give you something in, and that was 8 years ago, and you haven't heard from them since. We're going to water dripping on a rock just little by little. We're not giving up, but we're also not calling them every month. We're not getting, I joke with Becca Jewell, who's now at Nebraska Public Media, but that's a whole different system of contact. It's, we get stuff in mail, and if you've given to them once, you're on their list. And that's a different approach to doing that. We don't. We just kind of little nudges. If they don't want to, they're not into you, they're not into you. And a lot of future gifts are revocable. We all know that. So maybe they don't want to tell us, we're out. So.
I don't know if I have anything more to add.
hard.
Maybe something that I've tried a couple of times, almost more to help me not feel bad about myself. I do a handwritten note and say, we've reached it. We're so grateful for you, We've reached out to you, or I've reached out to you a number of times, really wanting you to know this, so I'm trying this note, and maybe even say, I'd really like to know why you're giving to us. What is it that you're trying to, that you want to accomplish? What is it that keeps you coming back to support? I'd be so curious and appreciative to learn about why you give. And, but I don't know, I'm trying to think, I've had that kind of conversation work, but I'm trying to think, have I had it with someone of that, that is just not responding. Probably not. I've had somebody at least a tad bit engaged when I've been able to ask that. So I don't know if that idea
and
is
it's
very
not like
good.
you don't have anybody else to contact.
Yeah, you
No matter
kinda,
how new or large or small the organization, don't kill yourself over it had to come to that conclusion. I'll try, I'll do a note, whatever way that might catch their attention and mean it. I mean, I want to know what is happening, but just move on. They're still in the system. Database is king. They're still in the database. If it does pop up in 12 years and we're all gone, it's going to pop, oh yeah, they gave back in whatever, and they're ready to be connected again. I guess, just don't worry about it. Okay,
Emily, that might have been my question.
okay.
Yeah.
How do you,
And that was.
when to stop?
Well, yeah, 'cause, we get new folks, and I'm like the third person that's tried to call them in the last 8 years or something like that, but I'm on a little bit of a time frame that we got 2 months to see if these folks would qualify them or not.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
many times you reach out to them?
Well, and you said something that's good, is you get somebody else to do it. You're new, or you're moved, or it's just somebody else. They don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from Susan or something. And you just try all that stuff, and if they're just not there, then put them off to the side and.
I will say our high volume people, and Claire and Ryan can speak to this.
Yeah.
Reach out 6 or 7 times within 6 weeks with email, phone, letter,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, and then once they get through all 6 steps,
And is that too much?
no one's been offended.
How do you know? They didn't come to-
They tell you.
We've been booking plenty of gifts, so it works, or we'll cycle through in another 3 years.
I'd love to. Yeah, do you two, either one of you want to talk about that, or
Yeah, you
or like
guys.
maybe the 6th time it works, or just any experience that.
Yeah, so I mean, in my experience, a lot of it has been, the primary response I get is someone will go, gosh, I've been meaning to get back to you. It is sort of often the response I'll get to sort of, call it our breakup note, right? Like, hey, been reaching out, I've tried a couple different ways, haven't gotten in touch with you. Here's my contact information, here's our website, let me know if there's ever anything I can do to help. And I would say far more often I get the, oh my gosh, I've been meaning to get back to you, and then, you know, you've just been on the back burner, than I get someone who's really, truly offended. Have I gotten a couple, I didn't want to talk to you, that's why I didn't respond to your emails? Yeah, of course, but out of several hundred folks that you put through Cadence, statistically you're gonna get a couple. Whereas I'd say 2 or 3 times more than that, it's been people who are like, gosh, and very early on when I started this, a donor told me, like, it's important to me, like what you're doing and meeting with you and having this conversation, it's important, but it's just not urgent for me. And that's kind of really reframed.
That's a great way, great description.
High volume of outreach and the high volume touches. It's like, it's not that these people don't want to talk. It's just that, like, I don't know, they've got grandkids playing soccer, and they've got an appointment with their tax attorney, and they've got, a vacation to Aruba, and, I understand why I'm behind, whatever else is on the list. And I would say that, some people just want to be curmudgeonly and left alone, but that's, you'll get that if you call them once, So I think on the balance, we've seen really positive success from having kind of a structured outreach of saying, we're going to give you this many contact attempts in this time frame, to really be able to say, we really tried to get in touch. And then when you look back, you go, yeah, we really tried. It wasn't just for me, I'm always amazed that you look back and you go, well, CK called this person once in 2002, and that was it.
That was it.
It was supposed to have called 3 more times.
Now, the other piece of that is not with current gifts, but if you're in the planned gift, you're really trying to do legacy work. And people update their stuff when they're ready to update their stuff. We all know that. And that's more setting an expectation. I'm very fortunate here at the foundation. We understand that's somebody else's time clock. That's not ours. Just because we may have a goal that we'd really love to have more relationships or more legacy gifts in a particular quarter, year, time period, whatever, it's not our call at all. Now, our activity can prompt that, but only so much of our activity can prompt it. And if they're not ready, and then 4 years later, I get a call and said, we were talking about that. It's like, yes, we were. Because I can go back in the database and find it. In 2002, so you can't talk to them. So, you can rebuild and go from there. But that's the other side, is not just the current giving and getting a response in a more compressed, which I love that whole system.
Planned giving.
Yeah, I know. But it turns it, with that. But that whole planned giving clock is different clock. Yeah, correct.
I found that events are a good way, maybe sometimes to connect with those people you've been trying to get a hold of. If there is a common event or whatever, I work with the church, so I have pastors' conferences, I've got events that I go to, and many times they come up to me and say, oh, I know, I owe you.
I owe you a call. I owe you an email. Yeah.
And so it's not that they don't want to. In fact, many of them have signed up and asked me to help them with their planning, but then I get ghosted when I start emailing or calling or
Yeah.
whatever.
I like your important but are not urgent. That's exactly it. Urgent is to get to soccer practice. Important is I want to do that, but.
I find if you take them off of your contact list, that's when they follow.
Yeah. That's why they stay in the database.
Play hard to get, and they come back.
All right, the hard one.
Okay. Fire
Okay,
away.
We might need context. I have a donor who could be getting paid for her half of 160 acres of farm ground in southeast Nebraska. She does not need the money and is trying to avoid the max capital gains. She also wants to give to us. What could be the best win-win scenario for her? CK, I know your answer based off of today's theme.
Yeah, yeah.
That's mine too.
Oh, good. Okay, tell us a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit
Give me,
more.
yeah, give us more.
Retired professor, University of Georgia, from the Czech capital over in Wilbur here. And never been married, no kids, lives very frugal, does not need the money. I don't know, here's what I don't know. I don't know if her and her brother have 160, and if it's under both their names or they each.
Yeah, how
I
it's-
don't
yeah.
know that detail
Right.
yet, but she's not getting hardly any income anyways off the land, but she doesn't need the land. She wants to get rid of it, and again, but she wants to help us out, you know, and then also leave a legacy gift as well, whatever she decides to fund, which we're still going back and forth on. Her big concern is what about the land? What about the land? You know, she said, when I met with her a few weeks ago, she said, well, I'm thinking to just have my brother buy me out. But I don't
The
want to deal with these
capital gains.
That's, yeah, that blows that up.
But she doesn't want to mess with land. She doesn't want to deal with that. And so trying to figure out the best way possible for her to, because she's already helped out the University of Georgia. That part's been done. And but she wants to help us out, and maybe even, so I know where you might go with this a little bit, maybe do something even in Wilbur, maybe do something with the University of Nebraska where she got her undergrad from. So there's other areas where she might want to fund to. And I don't know about the ground either. I know it's non-irrigated, but I don't know what's on it.
What's it worth
terraces
and-
that kind of, I just don't know the details of the land for a value either. But
Is she worried about who's going to own it?
yeah, her brother is actually a little more worried about that. They'd like to have some young farmer find me a young farmer anymore, but that's honestly what we talked about. There's just
Yeah.
there's
So at one level, you just give it to the community foundation, and then we sell it. Not a prearranged sale. Stay away from all that
But you sell
kind
it
of
to
stuff.
the
But we
brother.
sell it to whoever, maybe the brother. And then we take the proceeds and create a fund that's designated fund, half for the university and half for Wilbur, or NCF. I mean, there's other. I mean, we exist because if it's all going to Georgia or it's all going to the University of Nebraska, then my call is,
Well,
you know.
we want this to come to Boys Town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Boys Town,
and so
yeah.
if she's trying to do three things,
Yeah.
then that's why we were created, to get in the middle, because, you know, she can't give it to Boys Town and Boys Town writes a check to Wilbur every year. That doesn't work. So you need somebody in the middle to facilitate the gift, because you want it to be the gift. It's got to go, and then it creates three funds. You know, I don't know how much it's worth, or a fund that's split three ways, or all of those permutations. If she really wants to do three things, and maybe 75% of the proceeds every year go to Boys Town, and the other 25 get split to, you know, all of those fun things that she gets to think about. But the gift gets done, and you avoid the gains. And, you know, I mean, you know, you don't want to be stupid about it. You know, if you want to do some charitable things, then give it away.
Does Boys Town have a donor advised fund yourself? No, okay, okay.
We wish we did.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you
We've
get,
been
now,
talking about it for many years, but
yeah.
Yep.
we haven't.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's more. I mean, there's other donor advised funds around. I mean, there's other people that can be involved. We've all met Brian Klontz enough times with the crazy gifts, you know, the farm that has livestock on it and all that, you know. And his whole shtick is, you know, get it to us, I'll charge you 1 1/4, 1.2 or whatever his percent is, and then I'll give it back to you. I'll make the grant out of his donor advised fund, that Decomai fund that they have, and then the money all goes back to Boys Town, or often a nonprofit that can't handle that weird gift. So this is another one where people can be in the middle. It depends on her. Does she want to create something permanent? Does she just want to pass through? Otherwise, you can own a farm.
I think she does wanna have something permanent, like
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Boys Town, I know she would like to have something that's
Yeah,
there.
and that
you
can,
know.
that can go. So there's a couple ways you can get an intermediary involved to make sure that gift happens. You know, I mean, the university, you can get it and hold it and sell and do all that, but it's getting the money out to Wilbur,
See,
if
this-
that's important.
This,
Oh,
Yeah,
does it make a difference if, like, she or her brother both own 50% equally?
then that's all, yeah, that,
Or,
we,
or,
yeah.
or if, you know, she owns 80 and he owns 80, and they're, like, does that make a difference to the gift itself, or?
Well, you can technically gift an undivided 1/2 interest in the quarter. You could do that, I mean, legally. You can do that. It's hard, because then now we're co-tenant with brother. You know, the charity is the co-tenant with brother, and that's not something we want to do, unless
And I don't
brother's
know if
also,
Brother needs the income.
Yeah.
That's the difference. is,
Yeah.
You know, she doesn't, I don't know if the brother does.
maybe the brother does. Or can the brother afford to buy the other?
Right.
You know, yeah, we skipped the threshold question is, you know, what's the deed say? You know, what do they got going?
One of the main thing, giving the property avoids all the gain. And then it becomes an issue of where's it going, how's it sold?
How do you manage the gift
That's
side?
the kind of thing. I have two sisters who each own some land together. One of them, they want the money ultimately to go to the one's kids. One wants the money, one doesn't. You know, basically, one of them is going to put, I think, ultimately, this is gonna take a couple of years, but put an undivided interest in a charitable remainder trust. She may be her own trustee, where then she can control the sale. She and her sister are gonna join together and sell that property to one buyer as one unit. But then she'll have her money in the trust that will ultimately go to charities. Her sister, who's not charitable, will have her cash. You know, but it's just kind
There you
of,
go.
yeah, they're kind of going together and working out. But the big issue is how it's sold and when and to who, because they have really clear ideas of what they want to do. And we don't want to be necessarily the one on there negotiating with the non-charitable sister about how and when to sell this land, you know, so.
Yeah, that's more the issue.
so some of the things I'm thinking about, how do you have the kinds of conversations to get the information, but also that, I mean, it seems like it, in the best of worlds, you, with her permission, if she likes this idea, would sit down with you, her, and the brother and talk a little bit about, or maybe she'll decide she's going to do that conversation separately with her brother and then come to you. But it'd be nice because she might not know, things get lost in translation. She might not know what questions to ask. But to have a conversation and really plot out what everybody wants and needs, and then go really from there. It's not
Yeah.
that there aren't ways to do it.
Yeah, there are ways
There
to
are
do it.
Plenty of ways to do it.
But what do
It's-
they want to do?
Right, and yeah, maybe he doesn't, maybe he wants to sell it too. Maybe he can't afford to buy or doesn't want, you know, he likes the half he has, he doesn't want another half. So you almost need to get in the same room
Yeah.
and share what are everybody's wants and needs, and then where does that get us?
I found a couple, and we're kind of winding up, but I've had issues with complicated assets. It's, you know, the spouse's farm, and it was grandma's, and I want this asset to go here, and this asset to go there, and that gets complicated. And I've had success where we skipped that part, because they have a CPA, they have an attorney, we're an advisor in that, but we're not primary on what assets go and where, all that. And that's the way some people think. I'm going to give this asset to
They do,
niece and
don't they?
nephew. And I
Yeah.
say, enough. What do you want to do? Let's forget all that. let's talk about your impact. Do you want to help Boys Town and the university and Wilbur and, I mean, your example, and try and really focus on that and not even talk about the other stuff, because that'll get sorted out. There are ways to do it. There are techniques, there are all kinds of ways to get there, but I don't know if they know where to go, and especially with the brother. God, you gotta know. You gotta talk, so.
I'm in the midst of one right now, and I don't know how it's going to go, but here's the situation. A family lost their daughter to a rare form of cancer. And, and by the way, time-wise, are we already over time? Where are we?
No, we got 10 minutes, yeah.
Okay. So they lost their daughter. They and their friends who were so sorry, they all got together and put together a small nest egg and created a private foundation. Well, in the 50,000 range, so that's pretty small. And they did some good stuff with it, and the husband and wife managed the foundation, kind of a mom-pop sort of foundation approach. And then at one point, someone gave them $600 worth of NVIDIA. And then that became $4 million. And in the meantime, they were still treating it mom-pop.
Yeah.
And then they kind of forgot that, oh shoot, there's this 990 that they have to file every year, and they didn't for, I don't know, maybe 10 years.
Oh.
And they weren't also doing the 5% out of it, And so fast forward, they came to us and said, we really don't want to manage this anymore. We'd just like to take our entire foundation and give it all to you. And they have not benefited whatsoever from this. So even though they've mishandled it tremendously, they haven't personally, and they can show that they haven't personally benefited. Well, I'm in this meeting and I'm thinking, okay, you didn't file for 3 years. You are no longer a private foundation. An exempt, thank you, an exempt 501c3 or whatever. And part of me is like, am I the one that wants to be the bearer of bad news, or do I send them on to their attorney? And they didn't have an attorney, so I recommended one attorney who then said, oh, there's this guy, Howard, who has worked with this a number of times. This is who you want. And they do have a CPA. And so this is in the midst of getting sorted out. And and I'm going to get catch up. I'm going to get briefed on how this is going right now and what has happened and what still needs to happen. But I know, in addition to on the federal side of it, they're also working with the state attorney general, and their advisors think that they may have to pay about $14,000 or $15,000. I mean, I'm thinking six figures here, that like horrendous, and go back and file the 7 or 15 or whatever it is years that you didn't file, and then fees and penalties and But it's, according to the attorney, it's looking like it's going to be about $17,000 of fees, and they're going to be able to move it from where it is to us. And I'm really curious about that, and I'd love to let you all know, because I think this is rather interesting, that you might come into, whether it's that or if it's just somebody wanting to, I'm wanting to learn more about people who decide to either switch their private foundation to a DAF. I really want to learn. I'm not an expert in that, but I want to become one. Or this kind of situation where they took their eye off the ball.
Clean up and then transfer over. We have conversions. I'm surprised there aren't more, because all those little private foundations that just stop, just move it to a DAF. And I say that only because the way they're running it, I mean, the way they're actually granting whatever suits a DAF. It's not, they're doing some special stuff that you can only do under the private foundation rules. It's just just, it's so much easier for them. But control, I mean, now this is not a control issue because they had no control. They didn't do anything for a while. But this good stuff, they were doing great stuff. They didn't benefit. I mean, it's wonderful how you can help them out. Usually it's about, they kind of like writing that check. They like putting their name at the bottom of the check of the so-and-so family foundation. And they kind of like the broker calling them, even if it's only 50 grand or $250,000. Oh, should we buy this or buy that? So that's the piece that's harder to get people to transfer them over, whether it's to us or any community foundation or Fidelity or anybody, of just getting them moved over. They're it's very easy when they're in good standing
Yeah.
to do it, because it's really a grant.
Yeah.
They're making a grant of the total proceeds
To the DAF.
to the DAF. You create a DAF
easy
and they just make
peasy.
a grant of the 100% of the whatever. It's always cleanup and there's always some stuff like that. You got to tell, it used to be Daniel Russell, the Attorney General, and you got to tell people what you're doing when you wind it down. But on one hand, part of it's pretty easy. It's just you got a whole bunch of 990s to clean back up and the oops defense.
And the interest, or the one part that I do know that is helping this is the fund agreements that we have that will soon be signed. The fund agreement showing, proving in a way that this really is our intent. We are still not trying to, buy a second house with our NVIDIA funds here. We really do have this intent that it's going to go over here to all of it to a charity that is doing research and in the area of the cancer that affected our daughter. So the AG wants to see these fund agreements. He wants to see that they're
Sure he does.
signed. He wants to, that kind of proof. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. But what I don't know is that, does the AG then go on to help? Is that part one to help on the federal level? Are there two issues going on here, a state and a federal?
I think there's two issues. Somebody correct me. I think there's two. AG is the regulatory body for charities in Nebraska, so they just kind of need to know to ensure that whatever distribution only goes to a charity. I mean, because it was charitable money. So that's that.
So the federal
administrative
is-
junk with the IRS is you still got to clean that
yeah.
up. And if the fine is 15 grand or whatever it was for
can't believe it's so
skipping all that,
low.
that is the old oops defense. And it just, plus
really
you're getting
mean
rid
well.
of it and you're going to prove to the IRS. I mean, everybody's kind of
You're gonna
looking at the other
show.
side. The AG is going to say, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, you're going to move it to another charity. So you're proving your charitable intent continues. And we just, forgot to file that postcard.
It would seem.
10 times.
I don't know if this is how you're thinking, CK, that it sounds like they held, their main thing was one asset, so they weren't generating income subject to the excise tax of private foundation. The biggest issue is
Yes.
they didn't make the required distributions. And
Right.
I'm kind
Yeah.
of surprised they could get out of it that cheaply.
Yeah,
I am too. Well, to be continued.
To be continued.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, come back here and
Would you say that usually, like, once the person who is passionate about establishing the private foundation is out of the picture, that's when it's like, no, DAP is a better idea? Like,
that's my experience.
yeah.
So like once it goes
Mom and
to
dad,
the
once mom and
kiddos?
dad who started it, who sold the company, their attorney said, hey, you can save some taxes, create a little foundation over here with $350,000 and that'll help you with the whole transaction. And once they're gone or need to be, if they're incapable of being involved in that, that's when the call will come and say, is there some other way? Now, sometimes the next generation wants to do it. And that's fine, that's great, but if you want to give them an out, whether it's through the any of those, especially if it's truly, they're just grant making and they're doing grants just like they would if they had a DAF. Nothing real specific.
I've
Well,
often
yeah.
heard that the second generation isn't as interested, but the grandkiddos are.
Yeah.
And that can help establish it, because that happens through the relationship between the grandparents and the grandchildren becomes real strong in some of those special times
And in
together.
a lot of DAF, especially the True Donor Advice Fund agreements, you can have a successor advisor, and you could skip the kids.
You can skip the kids.
Go straight to the grandkids if they really are involved, and that becomes a whole, do they want to make this a generational philanthropy thing? Yeah, even if it's a small amount. They may want to have it be the family thing. So, yeah, that's cool. I think we're about it.
Yeah, that's time.
We'll let you go. Take a muffin on the way out, or whatever.
I'm going
Or
to.
they're going to be downstairs in the break room. Don't want to be tempted. Okay. Yeah.
You guys.
No, this is the group. So May 8th, right? That's all I need to know.
In Omaha
In Omaha.
at noon. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't want to walk off with